Hello, survivors. Welcome to the State of Decay 2 stream. I'm your host, Geoffrey, and we've got a very exciting episode for you today. If you were here last week, you heard that we are launching an open beta very soon. It's kind of a public test realm where players on Steam can opt in to play sort of an unfinished, in-progress version of our next update, which includes features that no one has seen before, no one's gotten to play with, and then you can take surveys and you can, submit feedback to us and let us know if there's bugs, if there's balance issues, if there's things that you don't enjoy as much as you'd like to, and we can take all that feedback, and that allows us to respond much faster and get improvements into these new features much more quickly than we could otherwise. So that was last week. This week, the beta hasn't quite launched yet, but we're ready to start showing you some of the features that are going to be in that beta. Starting with one particular one that I've brought some guests with me to give you a tour of. Starting with Eric Anderson. Many of you have met Eric Anderson. He's been on this stream before. He's been an engineer on State of Decay 2 for a really long time, and now he's leading the team whose features are going into this open beta. So, hi Eric, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. I mean, it's Monday, so I'm barely functional, but otherwise I'm doing pretty good and glad to be back.
We will grade you on a curve today. We've also got we've also got another visitor here, someone you have not probably met before. This is Larry Wu. He's a systems designer who has been working on a lot of different features behind the scenes, and right now he's here to show you one of them. Larry, what's up?
Hey, excited to be on the stream and extra excited for the big reveal.
Yeah, so before we do the big reveal, though, I should fill in another couple of things. First off, we're going to be doing a giveaway today. So before you start just maniacally entering the giveaway, let me remind you that the only way that you can get the prize is if you actually stick around to the end of the stream. We often have people hit exclamation point enter in order to enter the giveaway, and then they disapparate and we never see them again and we can't give them their prize. We really want to give you prizes, and so that means just think about it when you're typing that exclamation point enter to enter the giveaway. Make sure that you actually believe you're going to be sticking around so that we can contact you for it. So this time, what we're giving away is we've got some leftover swag from the Heartland era. So sorry, Larry, that's kind of blocking your face a little bit. But we've got we've got a lanyard, we've got a State of Decay 2 pin, and a couple of Heartland stickers. So we'll be giving that away to a couple of people who win. So just hit exclamation point enter if you want to enter the giveaway. And that's that. I think that was really kind of all of our business. So are you two ready to start revealing what's going on in the open beta?
I think so.
Let's go.
Okay, well then let's go to this gameplay view here. So I'm sitting here in Meager Valley, one of my favorite adorable little bases, this church here, but you can't really see the new feature yet. To see the new feature, I think we have to open up our map. So players might recognize that this map looks a little different than their usual map. Seems like we've spilled something on it. Eric, do you want to sort of give them a sense of what this new feature is?
Yeah, so this new thing you're seeing here on the map is plague territory, essentially, is we're calling it. And essentially what it is, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's basically an area around any plague heart that basically prevents you from securing a site, which essentially also means that you cannot claim outposts or a base until you have actually cleared out the plague heart that is creating that territory. It also, it extends the range at which we spawn plague zombies around the plague heart to be that whole territory as well. So now that whole territory will have plague zombies as well. So it's kind of unifying the narrative around plague hearts being so dangerous with the actual mechanics around it. Yeah, I mean that's the gist of it.
Why don't I get on the road and start walking through what it's like to interact with this feature? So my community right now, in fact, you probably can't see it because I've got Eric and Larry in the way, but we are kind of short on beds. And so, there's a lot of different places. Beds are not the most exciting resource in the world. There's a lot of places you can get beds, but let's just pretend that I've decided the place I want to get beds is this particular outpost right here. So I'm gonna get down off the roof and head in that direction. As I'm heading that direction, Eric, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of our motivations behind why we decided to work on this particular feature?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the things with State of Decay 2, is that it's a very open-ended game, where it's kind of like it's very player-directed. You kind of like open and kind of do whatever you want, survive, and I mean that's the tagline is how would you survive. So it's kind of up to the player to kind of figure out what they want to do. But one of the things I think you've talked about before, I think, is that we notice in data that we see a little bit of a player kind of fall off after I think around the 2-hour mark. I think it was.
It was 1 or 2 hours, yeah.
In terms of engagement. And I know personally, I went through a lot of user reviews and professional reviews, kind of getting the gist of like the kinds of things that people in general were complaining about or like wanted to see more of and stuff like that. And one of the things that came up a lot in the reviews was that just kind of like people didn't know exactly what to do. They didn't feel like they had a larger sense of purpose to be striving for, and like a kind of a forward sense of progression. And that's something I think we lost from going from State of Decay 1, where we had like the whole kind of campaign story, into 2, we don't have that same structure. So it's not as clear how you make forward progress anymore. So one of the things going through all these reviews, looking at this data that we decided that would help with this would be essentially the Plague Territory. It's something we had talked about before in the, internally on the team. But it's something that we originally, I think, wanted to kind of motivate players to kill more plague hearts and whatnot. But yeah, this is how we are approaching, essentially giving players that larger sense of kind of purpose, and making it clear that like really plague hearts are the danger on the map, and like that's kind of how you progress through the game. That was also something that came up in like even some of the professional reviews, is that some people didn't even realize that there was essentially a campaign to finish. Like the whole legacy arc and everything, you have to kill all the plague hearts to actually get to that point. And some people didn't even know that was the case. So actually motivating players to kill all the plague hearts and actually see them as the main, like that primary, like mid-game enemy that you have to go through, was also kind of one of those side motivations to like get them going through the whole flow of the game that we wanted them to get through.
Yeah, and so now you can sort of imagine a new player starting up the game, and they get to the on-ramp, and then the first thing they see is, oh, this map is controlled by the enemy. Well, I know what I'm here to do. I'm here to take this map back from the enemy. And it's just it's a very sort of visual, clear motivation that is stronger than I think a lot of the other stuff that we've offered new players. And you'll see that this is also this is also still a feature in progress in a lot of ways. Like for instance, right now you'll notice that on the mini map behind my head here, you can see that there are still little room markers that let you sort of go through the process of securing this site. I think that long term we're actually thinking that we would not even include those, because to really make it clear to players that even though I've gone through all of the rooms in this house now, I still can't claim it. Like I go over here and it's like I approach the flag and it's like, nope, site not secure. You're in plague territory. You can't do this.
Yeah. I mean, because you can't secure the site because it's still dangerous territory because it's too close. It's so close to a plague heart. There's not really. It sends the wrong message if you have like the site securing HUD still there. So that's something we're gonna be tweaking and kind of pulling out, making it a little clearer how everything functions. You want the UI to match the mechanics and everything, and make it very clear messaging wise how this all works.
So in order to claim this site, so what I need to do is take care of this plague heart whose sort of bubble is encasing this site. So I'm going to head in that direction. We do have a question from the chat though. Let's see here. Sempi wants to know, will these plague territories affect our existing save?
No. Well, so
not instantly, right?
No. So the way actually we're doing it is that you will have to either move maps or start a new community to enable these new features. So essentially, if you want, you can keep going on your current save without enabling this stuff for as long as you want. I mean, or at least until you
exhaust your current map.
Exhaust your current map. So it's a little bit of a opt-in procedure. As soon as you do move maps or you start a new community, though, then the plague territory will be enabled on all the new plague hearts that are spawned in that map.
So I have not found the plague heart yet. There it is. Oh, get off me, zombies! All right, so I got to take care of this plague heart real quick. Let me just drop a couple of C4s. Ah! Get out of here! Oh gosh, no! Heck no! Oh, did I dodge it? No! Wait. I think I did get hit by it. All right. For a second, I thought I'd actually dodged the bloater cloud. That would have been amazing. But I don't want to set out the C4 without being able to see it, so...
There's another question I think you can go ahead and answer.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Does this mean you won't see plague zombies outside of plague territory? Does it impact the spawning of freaks? So this is a great segue in. So we haven't messed with the spawning outside of plague territory, so you should still see as many freaks as you would see away from plague hearts as you normally would. So it shouldn't affect the spawning outside of that plague territory. It's essentially just that the spawning of plague zombies that we had near, like really close to plague hearts before, is kind of been expanded to the whole zone. There is still more tweaking we're doing with the spawning, because that second half of the question is, does it impact the spawning of freaks? I think it does currently, and that's one of the things we're currently tweaking right now, is to kind of make it a little bit, basically increase the... I think right now what we have is that the occurrence of freaks within the plague territory is a little bit reduced, but we're actually in the middle of tweaking that, so it's actually increased a little bit, or at least equal with the current like amount of plague of freaks you would see in the normal spawning.
So as you can see, now that I've actually killed that plague heart, it's no longer, encasing me in plague territory. So now, oh crap! Well, oh, I think we just hit an insurer, or I think we just hit an assert of some kind, and it just doesn't get. I'm playing on a dev kit. Nothing bad happened. It just was sending something back to home base or whatever. Okay, so let's claim this outpost. And so now we've got it. So all we had to do was kill that plague heart first. So Larry, so I think that one of the things that the reason why Larry is here is because Larry worked a lot on the why am I blurry? On the distribution of the plague hearts. So, in this particular example, I went to grab the nearest outpost, which was a Bed's outpost. Bed's outposts are really common, right? Like you'll find them everywhere. There's like little houses and stuff up here. I could have found a bed post outside of plague territory. And so we had to put some thought into like in the past, plague hearts were very random in their distribution, but we had to actually put some intentionality into it so that it would actually be interesting to try to go after valuable stuff. So Larry, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of like the theory that you sort of put behind the new distribution of plague hearts?
Yeah, sure. When putting plague hearts on the map, we were very intentional about thinking like, where do players want to grab outposts strategically, and we want to make sure that the most valuable areas in terms of resources and outposts were covered most of the time, for multiple reasons. Like, one, to give players a strategic reason to engage with the plague hearts, which was like one of the weaknesses that we saw in the whole plague heart system initially, which was that you can just ignore them until the end of the game. And and also just to give plague hearts kind of a semblance of almost organism intelligence, where like the more populated an area is, the more likely that this plague heart was able to manifest there and kind of create a problem for anyone trying to return to that area. And so, yeah, like priority places we wanted to hit were...
I'm great at driving, guys. I'm really, really good at it.
Yeah. We wanted to hit like the big bases, important outposts, and resource centers, like really crammed city centers and urban areas, so that most of the times what you want to find on the map, help your community survive, is covered by at least one, and at higher difficulties, if not more.
Yeah, so you'll see that here, like there's still a lot of randomness in it. So there's still, you can't, it's not going to be like the same, distribution of plague hearts every time. But you'll see here, like, some of the sort of smaller bases, like the church and the police station and the starter base, are uncovered. But a lot of the bigger bases, I think I'm being attacked by zombies. But a lot of the bigger bases, like Whitney Field, some of the ones that players are consider really valuable late game bases, those end up being covered, as well as things like, like your power stations and stuff like that, your very valuable outposts.
Yeah, we definitely didn't want the plague hearts to spawn in the same place every time you play a map. So yeah, we were very intentional about like making sure that every time you come back to a map, even, it feels like your strategy might change a little bit, because like now there's a new base that's uncovered, or now there's like a specific outcropping of outposts that is more easily accessible than last time. So yeah, we want to make it a little fun in that way.
Yeah, and that's actually something we've wanted for our maps for a really long time. The idea that that the players have to change their strategies on different playthroughs in the same map because of sort of random elements. And by the way, I apologize for some of the half-baked lighting that sometimes ends up in our dev builds. But yeah, but this is actually sort of giving us the ability to kind of to do that, probably to a greater degree than we have in the past. So right here, by the way, so I'm looking at the School Owners Brewing Company. I'm thinking that maybe this should be my next base. I suspect, though, that it might actually be in range of multiple Plague Hearts. And so I'm going to go after this nearest Plague Heart right here while we're talking and see if I can take it out and see if that's enough to clear out the space. It might not be, though. I might have to take out multiple Plague Hearts before I get access to this base.
Oh yeah, and you should mention what difficulty this is that you're playing on currently.
Oh, that's right. So this is I believe this is Dread difficulty. Yeah, so I'm playing Dread across the board right now. I think by the end of the stream we should switch up the map, switch up to a nightmare. I mean, sorry, to a lethal map, and sort of show players, how intense it gets, and maybe if we've got time, show them also a green map. And
yeah, this might be a good segue into a couple of couple more of the questions we had here. One of them was from Undead Toad was, will these plague territories be on all difficulty levels? And from well, you know what? I'm going to screw up names if I keep saying all these names. But will the size of the plague fog level with the difficulty? So I think that is a good thing to talk about. The territory currently it's on all difficulties, and we had discussed having the plague territory size like shrink or grow like on depending on your difficulty level. And it does, I think, a slight amount. Larry can speak to that more. But I think the main thing we found out is that because of the number of plague hearts naturally scaling with the difficulty, that it actually worked out really well that we didn't need to change the size of the plague territory and the different difficulties, because just the number of hearts naturally does the scaling that you would want. So essentially on green zone and standard zone, you're going to have less like area covered by plague territory than you would in, say, nightmare or lethal.
Yeah, in the different difficulties, they also, or we have the ability to make it so plague hearts respect distance with other plague hearts, differing amounts. And so in normal and green, plague hearts there's like a pretty large minimum distance that they'll place between themselves. But when we take a look at nightmare and lethal later, you'll see that they barely care at all if there's one right next to them. And so
yeah, you can have a strip mall made entirely of plague hearts, and it's just fine.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, the decision-making process you were describing earlier with picking up the base, though, Geoffrey, I feel like that's exactly the kind of decisions that we want players to have to make during their playthroughs, which is like, there's a risk involved here with getting the strategy I want to survive, and is that like resource and time investment worth my optimum strategy, as opposed to like picking up a base that didn't cover it at all. And yeah, I think having that's pretty great.
Yeah, it definitely does add another dimension to your kind of strategizing. I know it's definitely changed like what I've ended up going after, because like there's certain times that are like, I would love to get this particular outpost, but you know what? I'm not equipped to take out the plague heart right now, so I've like, had to consider my options and like, do I want to go for the easier, more like out in the open outposts? It's definitely affected like how I kind of approach like claiming territory and how I want to approach the game and balance my costs and risks.
Yeah, so we've got some questions. We've had multiple questions about what does this do to green zone, what does this do to standard zone in terms of their difficulty, and I think that it's less about increasing their difficulty, because if you do intend to sort of like complete a campaign at any difficulty, whether it's a green or whether it's lethal, you do have to eventually kill all the plague hearts, and so it doesn't really add to the difficulty of winning the game. What it does is sort of channel your options a little bit. It makes you have to think strategically, like Eric was saying. It makes you, especially at green difficulty, there's gonna be a lot of space between all the different plague hearts, and so you're gonna have a lot of options at your disposal. There's only gonna be a few areas where you have to think twice and maybe plan ahead and try to take out the plague heart before you can claim an area. But whereas in lethal, it's like you have to fight a plague heart before you can do practically anything. So
yeah.
On the early difficulty levels, it's more about channeling your choices and making determinations about what's easy and hard to do right now. But overall difficulty isn't really affected by it. that much.
Yeah, that was something we were worried about, and they were trying to pay attention to. Is does it make the easier difficulties actually more difficult or too difficult? And luckily we have a good number of people at the studio that play it standard and green. And after we did some testing and we're specifically asking about that, it sounded like that was actually not a problem. They're like, it could be harder actually. So like
If
it ended up
anything-
not.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, because a lot of the mechanics behind the scene that are naturally scaled, like how now that we have plague zombies at a larger radius, that sounded like maybe that was a concern, but because the infection rate is scaled on difficulty, that kind of naturally balanced out as well. Whereas on Green Zone, you don't actually build up a lot of infection by being hit by a plague zombie, so that ended up not being a problem like we thought it might. So yeah.
Yeah, if anything, that's one of the effects we hope that this has, and one of the reasons why we're putting this in the open beta is because we know that we can't really answer a lot of these questions until we've gotten some player feedback. But one of the things that one of the effects we hope this will have is demystifying plague hearts a little bit. Like one of the reasons I think why a lot of people who play Green Zone, for instance, might avoid plague hearts is because they sound intimidating, whereas actually at that difficulty level, it actually might not be nearly as difficult to fight them as a player who hasn't fought a lot of them might fear it might be. And so one of the things we're hoping this will do is get people to try fighting plague hearts earlier on in the experience, maybe learn a little bit about how not all that hard they can be to fight sometimes, and maybe demystify them and make them less scary and make the overall feeling of difficulty in the game actually become a little bit more manageable. But I don't know, we're going to rely on player feedback to sort of tell us whether that hypothesis actually works or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, gameplay or an engaging pattern of gameplay is one that involves tension and release. And with the previous incarnation of play cards, it was really easy to just kind of leave play cards alone and go about your business until you just had to deal with them at the end of the game. But with the idea of plague territories, now you're somewhat forced to engage with them.
Yeah, they weren't really integrated into the gameplay loop that well. They were kind of its own thing on the side, which definitely conflicted with the narrative. I know in the on-ramp, the beginning starter tutorial, the characters talk about the plague hearts being this very dangerous thing. You really need they make the area so dangerous, and it just wasn't reflected in gameplay. So this kind of it really just marries the mechanics and the narrative a little better, makes them match what you would expect.
Yeah, so it looks like I actually am going to have to take out 3 plague hearts in order to free up the space that I want. So that's kind of exciting. Yorkshire Spud has a sort of a slightly, just on the beta topic sort of question. They ask, will True Grit work on the beta Brant? So True Grit is an achievement that you get by staying alive for 100 days in any of the harder difficulty levels, Dread or higher. And, genuinely, I'm not certain what we do with achievements when you're playing in different branches. I know that we branch your save, so whatever you've been accomplishing in the original sort of branch of the game, when you switch over to the beta, we do branch your save and keep that. I have no idea how achievements operate, though. So
a question of an in-progress achievement? Will progress be carried over?
Yeah, so the progress with your community will be carried over. I don't feel like I can make any promises about achievements. I'm not sure if achievements are just you can achieve them just as easily in the beta as you can in the original game, or if there's some kind of exception made. Either way, though, your original save, once we sort of fork you, your original save gets preserved on the original branch. So if you go and do something crazy in the beta, you lose a character, whatever, you can always come back to the original save that you had before you switch to the beta, and that will be untouched. And so everything there will be preserved. Because who knows what kind of weird things could happen in the beta when we're testing new features. We don't want the safety of your current communities to be on the line.
Yeah, and I don't actually know technically under the hood what is happening, where the achievement progress is saved, but I'm pretty sure we're just basically copying the whole account over. So I think it might actually carry the progress over, but I take that with a grain of salt. This is me guessing here.
We do have an interesting question from Magic Man. He says, will the zone show up before the hearts and give away heart locations on Lethal?
So the way it works on Nightmare and Lethal currently, and this is one of the things we want feedback on in the beta, is that it will not show up front. But once you enter the plague territory, we will reveal the plague territory in the heart. So it is kind of an in-between kind of solution there, and we kind of want to get some feedback also, I think, on that to see if, like, is that too easy? Because we have the passive scouting range anyways for, like, if you're getting close to something, we reveal the sites, which includes like the plague hearts. So it shouldn't be too much of a difference in distance for when you would naturally passively scout a plague heart. But I think getting some feedback on that in the beta would be great. Like, is that difference too big or whatnot? But that's kind of our solution right now, is that we will not reveal plague hearts or plague territory up front. But once you enter the territory, and you're like actually in, and you're like, oh, there's freaking plague everywhere, there must be a plague heart nearby. That's when we reveal it and adjust that plague heart.
So isn't it nice to not be breathing in that red smoke anymore? Now that I've cleared that out, that plague fog does actually permeate a lot more of the map now that we've sort of extended the range of the plague territory. Am I right about that, Eric?
Yeah, that's correct. I think we still might have like the extra burst of like plague particle effects near the plague heart itself, but yeah, we've essentially got a more general like kind of plague effect that covers the whole plague territory. And I think it actually gets stronger the closer you get to a plague heart. So like that's kind of another way you could kind of track down the plague heart, like if you wanted to in game. So yeah, it does get more intense as you get closer to the heart.
So one clue that players, at least the way that it currently works, one clue that players are going to have about the location of the plague hearts is the fact that there are certain sites whose location is always revealed up front, particularly the bases and the like the billboards and the cell towers, the survey sites. You will see those in red, I believe, prior to seeing the plague territory. Am I remembering that right, Eric?
Yeah, that's right. Because of the way the UI treatment is, it does differentiate what sites are within plague territory and which ones are not. But like honestly, looking at a lot, especially in like Lethal and Nightmare, looking at the map,
there's nothing that's
so
not
much
red.
of the map is covered. It doesn't really help you find them that much better anyways, because almost everything's red, because everything's basically within plague territory. So yeah, it doesn't really help you narrow down very much where the plague hearts are from the start.
So Dragon King 5649 wants to know: will there be an increase of Zeds or boosted Zeds within plague zones or within plague territory? So we've had about 9 different names for this feature over the course of development, and we're going to keep accidentally saying the wrong ones.
I know.
Plague territory is the official name, but we've got like 5 different terms that are just going to be rattling around in our heads and eventually.
I know. I mean, I was telling myself before this, I'm like, don't say plague spheres. Don't say plague spheres.
Yeah, plague spheres. So originally, the very first pitch I wrote for this feature was called Plague Spheres of Influence, and that's a ridiculous name that no one is ever going to use. But we shortened it to Plague Spheres, and we called it Plague Spheres for ages. And so we're just going to keep calling it Plague Spheres by accident, even though that name appears nowhere in the game, because they don't even look like spheres. They are circles. They're clearly circles. It doesn't matter if there's plague up above or down below the ground. No one cares. It doesn't have to be 3D. Anyway, whatever. The question was: are Zeds going to be more common, less common, same? Whatever.
I think the main thing we're going for is basically, I mean, the ideal I think we want is basically regular zombies are swapped to kind of plague zombies for regular, non-freak zombies. I think in this build you're playing, I think there's actually a slight reduction in the amount of freaks because of the increase in just plague zombies. But in one of the versions we're working on right now, I think we're trying to make it so there's at least the normal amount of freaks you would see outside of plague territory. If not, maybe slightly more. That's still, I think, something we'll kind of figuring out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's mostly the plague variants you'll see inside plague territory.
So Clay Blanc wants to know: will infestations be impacted by plague plague territory? Like, will they be more common, less common, same distribution as before?
Currently, yeah, they are basically untouched right now. I I have future things I want to do with them.
Yeah,
But
we've been toying with a lot of possible ideas for tying infestations into this, but for right now, yeah, we're working just on the one feature, and we'll
yeah,
worry
right
about,
now we're not making any changes to infestations at the moment. Nothing's in committed. But I don't know.
We
We'll
got
see if I
ideas.
get my way.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So 7-Bit Brian wants to know: is this going to affect Heartland? Are players going to see this in Heartland? Is it going to affect the Plague Walls at all?
No, currently it's not affecting Heartland. We kind of want to leave Heartland as its own experience without disrupting that too much. I mean, it might be the kind of thing we can toy with in the future. It definitely, I mean, part of it is just the nature of development is that you have to also weigh the risks. And so because there are different things, the way Heartland kind of functions a little differently with Plague Walls and all that stuff, going through just all the testing also that has to go along with making sure it functions correctly in Heartland is one of the risks you have to weigh. It's a cost. And so for at least for now, it's not going to affect Heartland. I think it could be something we look into in the future, but it would be something we'd have to do very cautiously, and to make sure it doesn't cause any side effects. So yeah, for now it won't affect Heartland. Any existing saves it won't affect until you actually move maps or start a new community.
My guys are keeping this Juggernaut from falling under my crosshair ever, so I didn't even get to contribute.
I thought he was just running into the door over and over until he died.
Yeah, I guess so. So MRD Gaming is getting the impression that that this would undermine your ability to have sort of like a really long play save, where it would say like where you're trying to ignore the story progression and just focus on the strategic gameplay. For instance, if you're going for the True Grit challenge, for instance, and you want to play forever, and he's worried that this would make you focus on the story on the story progression instead of just ignoring it. And I'd say I think that that's a valid concern. I think that makes some sense. If people have basically if there's a lot of players out there who've been basically ignoring Plague Hearts specifically to avoid progressing the story, I can see how this would suddenly bring Plague Hearts into their experience a little bit more. In my mind, though, and again, we're open to feedback from players about how this affects the way that they play the game. In my mind, what my hope is that that players who if you want to avoid progressing the story, just pick one Plague Heart not to kill. Because the difference between killing all of the Plague Hearts, and like the difference between killing no Plague Hearts and killing all but one of the Plague Hearts, as far as the story is concerned, that's the same. The story doesn't care about the Plague Hearts until you have killed literally all of them. And so the hope is that they'll actually take this part of the game that used to only be a part of the story progression and actually bring it into the strategic gameplay and make it matter to players that it used to not matter to.
Yeah, that's essentially what I was thinking. Like that last Plague Heart, like you just keep it somewhere out of the way. I don't think it'll be a problem.
Which Plague Heart would it be for me? I think it's this Plague Heart right here. I just don't give a crap. So leave that Plague Heart right there. The rest of them I'll take out. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, even after you kill the Plague Hearts, like all the legacy missions that come, like you opt into those. You don't have to do those anyways. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'd like to hear feedback on that if it really does cause problems for anyone. But like, yeah, as far as it seems like a very opt-in thing. So I think you should have enough control over it for it to not be a problem. But yeah, feedback on that would be great.
So we do have a question from let's see here, from Your Cholesterol, who wants to know what surveying is like in this mode. So why don't I go track down? Actually, let me pick one that's a little bit further away.
I think we did update. I think it's in this build. I think we do have updated surveying.
I'm gonna find a really good place to go. There's a cell tower way down at the bottom of the map. I'm gonna start driving that direction. We'll go through that experience so that people can see it live. Let's see here. In the meantime, let's see. What? I think we've hit a lot of the points we wanted. Did you have something you caught, Eric? You wanted to bring up?
Here's a question that has some tangential stuff that we could talk about as well.
Mm-hmm.
One question was, will gear from destroying Plague Hearts increase in value when destroyed in high-risk areas? And by high-risk areas, I assume they mean in the Plague territory.
Maybe so in clusters of Plague Hearts or something?
Oh, maybe. So we didn't change the gear based on like if there's more than one Plague Heart in the area or anything like that. The main thing we did do with the actual loot dropped from a Plague Heart is essentially predetermine it instead of having it happen when the heart is destroyed. We decide it up front, and we advertise that on the map, so you can see what resource rucksack a plague heart will drop before you kill it. So to add a little bit another dimension of strategy to let you kind of target specific plague hearts as well if you're low on resources. So like if you need materials, you can decide if you want to take on the risk to kill that particular plague heart right there. Exactly. To like if you're having a hard time finding like materials, let's say, and just scavenging sites, you could take on the risk of taking on the plague heart to get that instead, because now that it's determined up front, you could actually see that.
Let's see here. So your cholesterol asks, can you still search for buildings in a plague territory? I'm not sure if maybe they mean
scavenge or
like, yeah,
I think they mean scavenge.
Okay, yeah. So if you mean like, can you search for items within containers? Yeah.
Yeah, you can still scavenge within plague territory. That's no problem. But because you can't secure the site, you won't automatically be shown where all the containers are. Like, because that's how it normally functions. Is when you secure a site, it shows all the icons for all the containers, so you know where everything is. So it is just a slightly trickier to actually find everything inside plague territory because we don't have those icons there.
And yeah, and actually, so we added those icons fairly recently, and there were some players who were like, "Oh, but I like the experience of being able to go into a site and not know where all the containers are." Well, here you go, those players.
Yes,
here's a feature for you.
It makes scouting useful again, because now characters with the scouting ability can still see where all the containers are inside plague territory. So that kind of brings that skill back up in terms of its advantage, which is kind of a nice, awesome side effect to that.
So cell towers are very tall, so we're just gonna be staring at this dude's butt for a little while. So James Crane has a question. I think actually kind of applies to a lot of different things. Are traders going to still show up in plague territory? Will enclaves still show up in plague territory? I mean, clearly the bounty broker's willing to go there.
Yeah, so currently that's the thing. The enclaves are still allowed to show up inside plague territory. We're not changing how they spawn at the moment. It's essentially, it affects the player. And I think it's something we want to investigate. What it would mean to not let them spawn inside of plague territory, and it might end up being a change, I think, to mission pacing, because essentially you would start out with a very limited set of sites that enclaves could spawn in, which would then kind of restrict the pace of missions at the beginning, but then would mean that as you kind of knock out plague territory, it would open up more area for more enclaves to move in and for different kinds of missions to start spawning. So it might actually be a kind of nice kind of pacing mechanism, but for now at least we are not changing that and letting them spawn inside plague territory, because enclaves are crazy and you're not.
So Undead Toad has got something. We should definitely pass this on to Krista. I'd like you to talk about the new icons, please. They're awesome.
Oh, I mean, yeah. So aside from doing the kind of the plague treatment, which we have the little red outline that kind of shows you what sites are within plague territory and essentially claimed by a plague heart, there is some new icon treatment as well. That is indicative of another feature we're working on that we're not going to talk about right now.
But one thing we can say is, though, that I think this sort of red disc that appears behind it means this is a valuable outpost. And so particularly for new players who might not have already fully explored the different range of outposts that are available, anything that's a base or a valuable outpost. So you can basically, when you're looking in plague territory, you can sort of decide, well, what are the places that are actually particularly valuable that I might actually want to pay attention to when I'm deciding which plague hearts to go after. This is going to indicate those outposts to you. But Eric's right. There's some more detail to that we're going to be talking about next week when Lucy comes on to tell us what she's been working on.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the other big features we've been working on as well. And that you should tune in next week if you want to know about that, because that is exciting as well. All right, let's see if we got any other new questions.
Yeah, there are some people who are looking at subtle hints in some of our UI that they're sort of indicating some of the features that are coming next week. So that's fine. We're happy to have. I mean, we knew that we were going to be showing UI that if you wanted to sort of take a fine-tooth comb through this video and find little hints about what else is coming, feel absolutely free. We knew that was going to happen. And so, yeah, we're going to be here next week to talk in detail about some of the stuff you all are noticing. But for right now, we're going to keep focused on Plague Territory. Oh, by the way, I should mention, I meant to mention it multiple times during the stream, but I totally forgot. We are doing a giveaway right now, and I think Megan has been pushing it in the chat. But if you want, we're about 5 minutes away from when we usually do the drawing for the giveaway. But let me put this up on the screen. So if you're interested in grabbing a State of Decay Heartland lanyard, some stickers, a State of Decay 2 pin, you hit ! Enter in the chat, and we're very soon going to do a drawing to see who can pick those up. Now remember, if you hit ! Enter, stick around. We want to actually give you the prize, and that only works if we can get into contact with you. So don't run off after you do that, all right? So, Polio Suar, I'm probably butchering your name, I'm so sorry, says, ever thought about having Plague Territory grow over time instead of starting out that big?
Yes, that was something we talked about, definitely. It definitely has, I think there's a lot of consideration that goes into that as well, because that's something we talked about, and like whether, like, because it could be a good pacing mechanism where like the plague hearts that are farther away essentially start covering more territory and become a bigger threat. But for simplicity's sake, at least for now, we just definitely decided to keep it statically sized to make it a little more understandable, because like there's a lot of like kind of knock-on effects that happen then, like you know, if it grows big enough now, like say you had an outpost that was established outside of plague territory and now it's encompassed by plague territory, does that mean you can lose the outpost? What I mean, there's a lot of like weirdness that comes with that that would need to be sorted out.
Yeah, it also kind of turns the progression around a little bit. Like right now, the way it's set up, you can think of it as a progression mechanic where you start owning very little of the map, and then over time, with accomplishments, you own a lot more of the map, and you've taken it back from the enemy. If we had it grow over time, then you would start owning lots of the map, and then negatively progress over time, which could kind of work against some of the motivations we had, which included giving players a clear progression mechanic.
Yeah, and that's just aside from all the sorts of like technical problems it could cause as well.
Yeah.
Because it definitely keeps things a lot easier on the back end to have them be statically sized. So, I mean, those are all the kinds of things when you're in development, like the trade-offs you have to make, like, oh, this would be cool, versus what are all the other costs that come along with that that you have to consider.
Well, like one thing we were talking about was the idea of like, what if we had outposts with their safe zones, you know, cut in to plague territory, so you could like sort of fight your way deeper into plague territory, and for instance, like place an outpost right next to a plague heart, and reduce the spawns and that sort of thing. And we actually it actually kind of worked that way in our heads for quite some time, and even in the build. But we ended up deciding, just because of a lot of just weird edge cases and complications, that it was going to kind of be unworkable.
Yeah, exactly. That's another one of the things. It sounded like a kind of a cool idea up front to be able to push into the territory like piece by piece, but in practice, it just ended up not being actually that useful. Like it wasn't, the safe zones were big enough to actually have that be something you could utilize very well, and it just caused so many other weird issues in terms of just like UI, and like certain times like things will get, you'd have territory get isolated in the middle of plague territory, and so there was just a lot of weird knock-on effects with that. That it's just one of those things. You're like, it's just not worth the cost, and just how confusing it ends up being for the player that you don't realize up front. And that's a big part of game development, is making sure that it's actually something that's easy to grok for players, because like there's a lot of information already in the game. Like there's a lot going on here, so anything that's not like kind of easy to understand is just going to add to the cognitive load and make it just harder for players to actually kind of make wise decisions, because they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ideas we talked about with like increased urgency mechanics for the plague hearts, they all sounded really cool, but it was also such a huge challenge of how is a player going to understand that. But it's like, when does a plague heart grow? Do they have timers? Do they all have timers? Is that like 20 timers on the map?
Yeah.
How big do
is
they
it
grow?
indicative of anything about the plague heart itself?
Right.
Like one of the things we talked about was like, do we have to have different plague heart strengths? Like,
yeah. Which again, all of that sounds like potentially could be some really good gameplay in there, but we can't do everything at once, right? We're not going to drop a huge rock in the pond that's so huge it's just going to knock all the water out. Like we need to do one thing at a time and figure out what's fun about this, and then consider how we could even advance it further. Now, I'm about to go and generate a lethal map so we can have a look at that. In fact, I might need to cheat a little bit to let us see all of the plague hearts so people can see how pervasive it gets. While I'm doing that, Verse Twitch asks, does blood plague gain increase within a plague? They call it a plague sphere. The terminology has already caught on.
Crap. I shouldn't. I shouldn't say it.
I think it was. Yeah, no, it was me too. Like we all did it. I think Larry might have actually been a little bit more circumspect than the rest of us. But anyway, that was actually something we considered, right? Was like actually we even were considering having you constantly get sicker while you're inside a plague territory.
It's still in the build. No, it's so currently, yes, there is an increased rate of plague infection when you get hit by any attack that deals plague. Currently is increased rate inside a plague sphere. It's something I think we are, after testing with it, we're like, well, it's not really something you can communicate very well.
Mhm.
They're like, hey, there's a higher risk. And also alternatively now, like essentially inside of plague territories where you're going to generally just find plague zombies. So I think the only time it matters is in lethal, because in lethal, you have plague zombies essentially everywhere. And so having a difference in your plague infection rate inside the plague sphere, God, plague territory.
No, we knew this was going to be a problem. We knew it was going to be a problem.
Oh my God. We should have come up with an official name way earlier. Oh my God. I knew. Even when I talk internally about it now with the real name, with plague territory, people are confused. Yeah, I think lethal is really the only time that having an increased infection rate within a plague sphere makes much sense, just because there's a lot of zombies outside of plague spheres anyways. So having plague territory be more dangerous in that regard really is only going to be noticeable in lethal, because for everyone else, they're really only going to see plague zombies within plague territory anyways. But technically there's a slight boost, I think, in the build you're currently on. I think there is a slight boost to the infection rate within plague territory.
So this is a lethal map, and so this is what it looks like when you first spawn. Notice that there, because you spawn in your very first base, we don't cover that in plague territory. That means you're not inside any plague territory when you first spawn, and that means that you haven't revealed any plague territory. But you can kind of tell the entire map is just pervasively covered in it, because every single one of these like pre-revealed, pre-looted sites, plus all of the like special, the base sites and the the survey sites, they're all red. Nothing is not red. So I'm gonna switch over to grid view here, and I'm actually gonna, let's see here. Let me hide box 3 so that I can cheat and reveal everything. I'm hiding the cheat menu as though people in our community don't already know what our cheat menu looks like. Whatever. It just looks bad. It's all weird. Okay. Anyway, let me make the cheat menu go away and pop this sucker back on. So now this is what it looks like after I've actually revealed the locations of all the plague hearts. You can see Larry has been merciful and has left us a base that we could still switch to if we wanted to, but it's the smallest, crappiest base on the map. And everything else is totally within plague territory. So if you're playing on lethal, you're going to be fighting some plague hearts fairly early on if you want access to any outposts. You've already got problems near your base anyway because this is the lethal zone. But yeah, so you've got these areas, like if you need some extra beds, if you want to, scavenge around here, you totally, and you can scavenge inside plague territory. That's fine. You can get all the equipment that you need. But if you want an outpost, you're going to be taking on at least one of these hearts. An outpost that gives you much more besides beds.
Yeah, it's definitely, you're gonna have to adapt a new strategy. Which luckily our in-house lethal players seem to be really loving it. And especially, I think there's just one of the kind of side effects that's kind of a happy bonus is that you can't cheese plague hearts anymore by establishing an outpost right next to a plague heart and thus preventing zombie spawning within a plague heart during a plague heart fight.
Yeah, on my personal stream, Ranhoff Court asked me that exact question like yesterday. It was like, I was just hinting, hey, we've got a new feature we're working on. He's like, did you make it so that we can't cheese a plague heart by dropping an outpost right next to it? And I'm like, Maybe. Come watch the stream. He nailed it really hard, and I was like freaking out.
I know that's something that Joe Swarner is really pumped about. That it kind of prevents that strategy. Yeah, our internal lethal players seem to be enjoying the new strategizing they need to do with it. So I'm definitely interested in hearing how the larger community takes it on lethal, because it throws a wrench in the works there.
So
Seems
let's see the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's go look at a green map. And while that is loading up, we actually have a winner. We have a winner for our giveaway. So the winner is named Bunny MJRN. So congratulations, Bunny. Bunny is going to get all of this nonsense. I actually should hide that because it's not relevant anymore. So Bunny is going to get some of our leftover swag from a past PAX or whatever it is we made this stuff for. Congratulations. You get a pin, you get a lanyard, you get a couple of stickers. This is some of my favorite swag that I've already got in my house. So congratulations to you. And now, so this is the green zone. So you can see that we've got, way less coverage than you saw in the Dread Zone. There are these like key areas that are covered. You'll notice that Whitney Field really consistently tends to get covered by Plague Territory, and this is all intentional stuff that Larry worked out. And actually, one thing we haven't talked about, Larry, is the fact that historically, the lethal zone in particular, but all of our difficulty zones to some degree or another, had a lot of variance in like how many plague hearts would land. Like if a player wanted to, speed run plague hearts or something like that, they would find that initial roll where they're rolling how many plague hearts there are would be really, really critical. And I believe that we have calmed that down to some degree.
Yes, I don't actually know how pervasive that behavior was before all this, but I think players will be happy to know that now there will be a consistent number of plague hearts per difficulty.
And that also includes if you play through the initial tutorial and the on-ramp. There's a lot of players, speedrunners would be like, okay, do I need to play through the tutorial so there'll be fewer plague hearts on the map? That's no longer the case. It's the same number of plague hearts no matter how you get into the map.
Yes.
Even our little like debug alternate starters, we've got the new thing so we can, so it's really consistent. We can test it all really thoroughly. So let's see, we've got 8 minutes left. So, I can play around in the green zone, I guess. Let me see if there's any other questions coming in through that we missed before, or any items in our notes that we. Oh, actually, here's something that I have not put on the screen in a while. If you're interested in getting involved in the beta that's going to be testing out this feature, because we have not actually announced when this feature is going live to the general public, but it is going to be going into our open beta, our public test realm that's launching very, very soon. So if you are a Steam player, because we've only set this up on Steam so far, if you're a Steam player, you should go over here to www.stateofdecay.com/contact. This lets you sign up for our newsletter, and you can specifically say that what you're interested in is hearing information about the beta. So whenever the beta does go live, whenever it launches, you'll be one of the first people that is told about it. So you can go and get yourself set up, and you can try this feature out before it's gone live to the general public. If you are an Xbox or player, or you've been playing, sort of a Windows Store version of the game, we haven't got an open beta yet for you. Though it is going to be open, it means people can share information about it. They can stream it live. They can, they can share anything that they discover about the game. And so you will be still, up on the news about what's going on. And if you're actually, if you really want to sort of push us to extend this beta into other platforms, just let us know. Talk to us on social media. Make some noise. And it is something we do want to be beta-ing these features as broadly as we can. The reason we went with Steam, a lot of people have asked us, the reason we went with Steam is just because we already had a closed beta running on Steam, and it was just, we had a lot of features we were working on, a lot of big stuff going on at the studio, and, and we wanted to get this beta out quickly and simply with as few, problems as possible. And so we went with what we already knew. The closed beta basically converted straight over into an open beta, and it wasn't going to cause us a bunch of problems on top of all the other things we're trying to solve while we're getting this build out into the wild. So that's it. We don't have some philosophical commitment to Steam being the only place we ever beta. So let us know if you're interested in that. We'd love to hear your feedback. Or if you just have feedback on stuff you're seeing when other people are playing the game, if you're seeing a live stream of somebody playing in the open beta and you want to give us feedback on what you saw, that's legitimate too. So there's all kinds of ways that people can communicate with us, and we're really interested in hearing everything you all have to say.
Our base is getting slammed by a wall of dead guys.
Oh, it looks like our base is getting attacked.
Oh, that's a problem.
Well, it's the green
Um,
zone. Probably not that bad.
Not today.
That's true. There is a question. There are a few questions that kind of about other kind of ancillary things that we did end up touching upon. One of them is, do characters still let the player know if an outpost is good with audio? They currently talk about claiming a useful spot. It's funny because that's actually been a long-standing issue on our plate,
Yeah.
because the VO that says like, "Hey, this is a great outpost," plays on any outpost currently.
Yeah, the only sites it doesn't play on is like sheds that you can't turn into outposts. If you go into like the most boring house that only provides beds, it will still say, "Hey, this would make a great outpost. We're idiots if we don't claim this as an outpost."
Yeah, if it could be outposted, they would say that VO line. So that line actually wasn't helpful before. We actually did as part of this feature, well, and the other upcoming feature is to make that line actually make sense. So it now only applies to certain outposts. The ones that we actually, I think it's the ones that you saw the new treatment on.
Yeah.
In the map menu.
If they've got the red
ones
disc
that are,
behind them or whatever, the gray disc behind them, then
yeah, the new high value ones they're now, those are the ones that actually have the VO that calls it out. So it's actually going to be more helpful than it was before. And also, well, you're in the middle of something, but we did some other kind of UI tweaks as well, just usability tweaks. While we were digging around in this stuff, that I think are going to help. Like on the map now, enclaves actually have their own icon to differentiate them from just bases or claimed base or anything like
that's
that.
right. We don't have any right now. I don't think. So the bounty broker, he's
The
got
bounty
his own
broker.
icon.
Yeah. So that's also easier to differentiate as well. He doesn't
Yeah.
just look like any other enclave or base or whatever.
Well, actually, I might be able to just here. Let me hide the game.
Like
I might
radio
actually be able
call?
to spawn an enclave and let you see what's going on there. Let me try to find a mission that I can spawn. Were you starting to say something, Larry?
Oh, I was just gonna say if you had enough influence to radio one in.
Oh, that's right. That's you know what? That's a better way to do it than the dumb way I'm doing it. Totally.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm doing it in the dumb way now, and it's hard to undo the dumb way. Okay, now I'm going to do it the right way. And it's going to be, actually, let me make sure. Yeah, we do have enough influence. So yeah, I don't even need to hide this at all. Let's go back to this, and let's call in somebody over the radio. So find people, find other survivors.
Hey, ew, is this thing even fucking on? Am I talking to myself here? Hello?
And this might be a good segue into talking about one of the features we've already released, but previously we did specifically to kind of fit into this overall goal of like providing kind of better player progression, which is the enclave recruitment, the ability to basically recruit from any enclave that's not hostile, because previously way back you could only recruit from allied enclaves, and neutral and friendly you had to like keep doing missions for them whenever they happened to cast,
Or just waiting around, for missions to spawn on their own because you had no control.
yeah, it was all luck based, whereas now you can actually, before they're allied, when they're neutral or friendly, you can pay influence to actually recruit them. That was kind of part of this larger goal to like give better player progression. We are also not only trying to give like better things that let you like better things to give progression, but like remove as many blockers to progression as well. So like a big part of progressing your community and growing them is recruitment and getting more people, getting people with new skills. And because that was gated on basically kind of random luck essentially before, on getting the missions to cast that let you actually get enclaves to the allied status, you didn't really have much agency over it. So that was one of the kind of blockers to getting your community to grow. And so that was one of the things we did to try to give you more agency over your progression, was letting you pay influence to recruit from enclaves as well.
Yes, it's kind of funny how the same thought process and the same set of goals led us to make a couple of very different features. And so it was part of this larger effort that sort of led us to make that change to enclaves. And that was ready early, so we released that early in an earlier update. And now some of the bigger features are ready to land. It is 4 o'clock. We have run out of time. So we really appreciate everyone hanging out with us right now. We should just say a very quick goodbye. Eric, thank you so much for like running people through how this feature works and for leading the team that put it together. I'm really excited about
certainly.
Yeah, not only this, but also we're not going to have you on next week. We're going to have Lucy on to explain the other feature. But the other feature, the reason it's there is because of the priorities that Eric set. Because he was reading all of these feedback, all of these reviews and stuff like that, figuring out what we could do to make this feature really work. And so Eric gets a lot of the credit for what's going to be cool about this game after we release this update. So thank you, Eric.
Yeah, and all the blame as well. So,
well, I'm leaving that kind of subtle and unsaid.
yeah. But yeah, no, I was really happy to be back, and I'm really excited to check out next week's stream.
Yeah,
that'll be good too.
And Larry, thank you so much for joining our team. You know, you're a new face to a lot of our audience, but Larry's been doing not only this feature, but we've got a bunch of other features that are in the works, many of which are not even going into the beta that Larry's been working on. And so thank you so much for working on this and everything else you've been doing.
No, thanks for having me on the stream. I can't wait to hear all the player feedback.
And with that, we're going to get out of here. So next week, our guest is going to be Lucy. She's going to give us a tour of another new feature that's coming in the beta that is very closely related to the Plague Territories. And I think that's it. So why don't we just go to the YouTube outro screen? I can't even talk anymore. What the? Oh, I haven't gotten any sleep lately. It's whatever. I've got broadcast training this week, and I'm going to get better at not doing that. So, 20 seconds of this, and then we're out. And it's awkward.